Well, hello there, my wonderful friends. Welcome back to another episode of our /ProRevenge, where you get to hear stories about people getting what they deserve. Guys, I hope you're having a fantastic day, because I certainly am. In this ProRevenge episode, you're going to hear 3 stories. The first story, you'll hear how OP deals with a scamming couple at a gas station, and the second story, OP takes down her shady boss and his mistress. Scandalous. Guys, I hope you stay for the stories today, and hit that subscribe button, my friends, for future revenge stories. Let's dive in. I don't want to talk too much. This first story is titled, Exploit My Generosity? Hopefully you don't like driving. So, one night, I was on my way home from work and needed to stop at a gas station. This gas station was right off a very busy tolled interstate highway and had an attached convenience store, as most do. It was dark out, and when I pulled up, I started pumping my gas and was headed to the store when another customer stopped me. His truck was at the pump across from me. He went on a sob story about how he just got a ticket for not having money to pay the tolls, being completely out of gas, and needing to get home since he accidentally took all of his infant son's formula with him when he left. There was also a woman with him, looking through the diaper bag while he related his tale of woe. And right when he mentions the formula, she yells, "Yeah, all the formula's in here." What were we thinking? We really need to get back. She said her wallet should be in the bag somewhere, but after dumping all the contents inside the truck cabin, she lamented that it wasn't there. So yeah, obviously they were looking for me to give them money. For some stupid reason, I decide to give them the benefit of the doubt. I go into the store, take out a 20 from the ATM and give it to them. In retrospect, this was such a textbook example of a standard driver scam, but I guess I was really naive. But then, instead of thanking me for the money, the brazen son of a gun responds, "Thanks, but we really need another 20 to make it home. Any way you could go get us more?" He also promised that he would mail the money back to me if I gave him my name, address, and phone number. Yeah, right. At that point, I begin to regret giving him anything, as all the red flags are registering in my mind at once. Both of these people were very unhygienic, greasy hair, very poor teeth, and dirty clothes. The man's pupils were dilated a lot more than would be expected under the bright lights of the gas station, and he was especially twitchy. Likewise, the woman was pacing around, muttering to herself in faint concern. So yeah, they were probably both high. Also, looking at the contents of the diaper bags sprawled across their truck's interior, there was plenty of trash, but no baby formula. I thought to myself, if I'm going to ruin these people's night, I needed to be sure. So I agreed to get more money, but first I asked him, you think I could see the citation that you got? My cousin's a state trooper and could probably take care of it for you. I just need some of the information on it. As I jot down his license plate number on my phone, he checks his pockets before saying, I have no idea what I did with it. It's okay, I'll just pay it. No big deal. I'm thinking, so you don't have money for gas, but paying more than $100 on a traffic ticket is no big deal? Uh-huh. I also noticed the state of his license plate didn't match up with his story. Annoyed at myself, I'm making my way back into the store, and the wheels in my head are spinning. I'm thinking, how can I get back at this couple? Have them kicked out? Nah, they'll just go to another gas station and victimize someone else. Call the police? They might not get here in time. I'm a few feet away from the door when genius strikes. I turn and call over to him and say, if you want, you can take my EZ pass for the tolls. I don't really need it anymore. It's right on the dashboard. The door should be unlocked. He shouts back, "Oh, that would be great! Thanks!" I go into the store and pretend to use the ATM while I'm actually using the app on my phone to cancel my EZ pass. I report their fraudulent activity to the attendant and hurry back outside. I told the man that I couldn't take any more money out of my account and that I'm sorry. He's disappointed but didn't press me. I'm grinning like a smug idiot on the inside, and I get into my car and notice the transponder is gone and drive off. I pull over a few minutes down the road and call the EZ Pass office. By some stroke of luck, they're open late that day, and I'm able to speak with an actual person. I explained to her that when I got into my car just now, I noticed my transponder was gone. I already canceled it but wanted to make sure it was all set. She confirms it's deactivated and I can come pick up a replacement for a small fee. Not today, she asks, and I tell her where and by whom I suspect the transponder was taken, giving her their license plate number and address of the gas station. She promises to pass the information along to the state police. Perfect. A day or so later, the state police calls me to say that they've recovered my transponder and needed me to come in to give a statement. Of course, I obliged. While there, I tried to pry more information on the fate of the con artists, but they weren't very forthcoming at all. Luckily, I told my cousin the story, and she said she'd look into the case for me. According to the report, they got CCTV footage from the gas station showing me giving the man money and then him taking my transponder when I went into the store. Afterwards, the meth heads got back onto the interstate and stopped at the nearest rest stop, where they presumably tried their scheme again before moving on to the next one to repeat the process. Eventually, they got off the toll road and onto a different highway. When they drove through the EZ Pass toll lane, they got flagged for not paying and were pulled over a few miles away. At this point, I was very satisfied, having caused them to get a 100% citation, but that wasn't the end of it. The cop notices something's up with the driver and calls for backup. When they arrived, the officer gave the guy a field sobriety test, to which he failed and was arrested. While this is going on, the woman flipped out and started running. She doesn't make it far before they catch up to her, and whereupon she resists arrest. All in all, the guy was charged with a DUI, not his first-time possession, as they had some meth in the truck, theft by deception for the 20 they got from me, and theft of the transponder. The truck was impounded, and the guy got a large fine for operating without insurance, along with a $100 fine for not paying the toll. The woman was charged with possession and resisting arrest, and she also had a record. All in all, a pretty sweet revenge. They ended up only being tried for the drug-related charges, but I'm still very satisfied with that, along with the fines. It gave my cousin a good laugh, too. So guys, let me tell you the time I was freaking tricked by this guy outside of a Wendy's. So I pulled up late at night, right after work, and was approached by this guy who told me his truck was impounded, that he was a welder, he has no money to get home, and that him and his dog were starving and haven't eaten for 2 days. I felt so bad for the dog that he pointed to that was tied up, so I brought him inside and let him order whatever he wanted off the menu for him and his dog. I made sure his dog was going to get something to eat. So he ended up getting a Baconator combo for himself and a plain baked potato for his dog, and I ended up giving him 20 as well because, I believe in good karma, and I've done my good deed for the day. Well, my friends, a week or so later, I was going to a Walmart with a friend, also in the area late at night, when lo and behold, this freaking guy shows up again. So he comes up to my friend's window, it's like 11 p.m. at night, and he gives us this sob story about him being a plumber this time. He's a plumber, first time was a welder, he was out of work, etc., and he asked for 20 to take a bus to go somewhere, and I said, "Hey, I recognize you. I bought you a meal at Wendy's last week, and I gave you money, and you said you were a welder. What happened?" And you guys should have seen his face. He turned around and walked away without saying anything. So, that's when it hit me that he freaking pointed to some random person's dog and pulled at my heartstrings the first time, and I was pretty upset that I got taken advantage of. Honestly, I didn't care if he starved, to be honest, but the little sob story about the dog not eating for a few days really got to me. So yeah, that was my story of the time I got scammed because I wanted a dog to not starve. Guys, let me know in the comments if you've ever been approached by a shady scammer with a sob story. I'd love to know in the comments below, and I'd love to share the comments in my next video. This next story is titled, "When Taking Advantage of Young Employees Goes Terribly Wrong." Once upon a time, there was this HVAC company who did small-scale projects for the local municipality. Enter me, an 18-year-old girl fresh out of high school looking for a job. I got hired at this place as an administrative assistant with no experience whatsoever. The person who interviewed me was this horrendous human being named Erica. She did not work for the company, she was just the owner's mistress. This becomes important later. This was to be the start of a very long and painful experience, but one I got my revenge on in the most spectacular way possible. My boss was this very tall, very intimidating West African man named Dave. He was huge, about 6'7". His voice was deep and he was quite an intimidating man. Despite this, he was a very calm and mild-mannered person who rarely ever raised his voice. He did all of his shady things with a smile and the tip of the hat, like a true gentleman. He owned the company and considered himself to be successful, but he was by far the shadiest person I've ever worked for in my life. I didn't realize at the time that many of the things he would have me do were illegal, very illegal. Now, a very funny and ironic side note here is that both Dave and his disgusting side piece, Erica, were very, very religious and would remind you every chance they got. Religious type of couple. Dave was married and had a wife and 3 kids back in Ghana, but had his little plaything, Erica, here in the States to keep him entertained. His wife was not aware of Erica's existence, and she did not consent to this arrangement. Now, one would assume that since Erica was the one who interviewed me, that she works at the company, right? Wrong. She had a very good job with the US government and would regularly email me to micromanage me from her government email address regarding my work back at the office. She was located in an entirely different state and would visit every few weeks to be with Dave and call it work. It was during one of these trips that she hired me to work there. Erica was a master at mental torture. She was nasty, rude, and would dial back all of her evil ways when Dave was around, so he believed that she was the perfect angel. She was well into her 50s and would regularly bully me. She would always make snide remarks at me when I needed clarification on something like, "Do you speak English or do you not? Just get it." Mind you, I was an 18-year-old given the job of an HR director. I was in charge of all office operations, payroll, union benefits, insurance certificates, IRS forms, bank accounts, child support claims, unemployment claims, the works. He had one 18-year-old running his entire business. I'm a naturally very organized, punctual, and technologically savvy person, and they took full advantage of that. These are some of the super illegal and shady things he had me doing. 1. Changing the dates on insurance certificates to make them valid even though they weren't. 2. Paying union workers off the books. 3. Falsifying payroll documents. 4. Using literally any method to avoid the IRS, such as putting things in his wife's name, etc. 5. Falsifying approval signatures for projects. And 6. Pacifying vendors he owed money to while sweet-talking them into sending us more equipment without paying. There are so many things I can't think of at the moment. He never gave me the context of what was going on when he gave me these random assignments. It was only until later on that I started putting 2 and 2 together to figure out that most of what he was doing was shady. I worked at this place a total of 3 years and regularly had mental breakdowns in the office because of the sheer amount of work, bullying, and pressure from Erica and Dave. During this time, I hired a lovely young woman named Lily to help me make copies and answer the phone while I basically ran the entire company. She was a student around my age and had great work ethic. Erica would bully her too, so we had great friendships and a mutual burning hatred for this creature that calls herself Erica. She helps me exact my revenge on these cretins later on by giving me documents, information, and whatever I needed, since she was still logged into the company email long after she left. Now, I have stories for days about the various messed up things they did to Dave's various contractors, his employees, and myself included, but this story is already long enough. So, I'll tell you about the time that Dave told me to, quote, "Take a vacation, you look stressed." He sent me on a vacation with 2 weeks' pay and said a lot of pleasantries about how hard I worked for him, how he couldn't run the business without me, yada yada. It was all lip service. Because when I returned on Monday after my 2-week vacation, I see some guy sitting at my desk using my computer. Of course, I figured it was a mistake, or he was a new engineer using my computer for drawings. Well, tough luck for me, because the next minute, I hear Erica and Dave walking to the office where my desk was located. I had no idea that Erica would be there. They took me into the back of Dave's office and said something along the lines of, "You're fired." To put icing on this cake, Erica made up some convoluted excuse as to why they couldn't give me my money that I was owed from working overtime the week before I left. I stood for 2 more weeks while I finished up the finals. I kept going over the various scenarios in my head where I was belittled, talked down to, disrespected, and shamed for not being religious and even taken advantage of. I decided that they would have to pay, and so I started my beautiful waltz of revenge with the IRS. I texted Lily and told her to start looking for a job ASAP because this company was about to go down. I began by filling out all the whistleblower paperwork, off to the mail that went. My next stop was the Department of Labor. Same routine, I filled out the forms and sent it off with a smile, all aboard the revenge train. The next stop, the labor union. I sent an anonymous letter detailing how he was avoiding paying benefits by hiring union guys under the table. But wait, there's more. I then proceeded to sign up Erica's government email address to every single marketing and spam site I could find. I then contacted the insurance agency whose certificates he had me alter and told them not to work with him anymore because of what he was doing. I sat and waited for a few weeks, and slowly the responses from various agencies trickled in. Many violations were filed against him, and various liens were placed on every single asset he had. He no longer had insurance, so the major contractors would no longer work with him. In less than 6 months, the company went kaput. Fast forward 6 years, I'm sitting in my apartment enjoying some fine wine and some premium weed from California when I get an email on my super old AOL account that I haven't used in years. It's from Erica, but her personal email address, and I see that it's a mass email to everyone in her contact list. It read something like, "Please help. I'm stuck in Italy and have been robbed of everything, including my money and passport. If anyone here could help me, I would really appreciate it. I am stranded here with nothing and I don't know what to do." Cue my hysterical laughter for probably 10 whole minutes. And yes, I did reply back to her email. My reply was short and simple. It said, "Laugh out loud, is this real?" And that's the story of how you should not take advantage of young employees. The next story is titled, "I Will Make You Regret Being Born." This was about 9 years ago. I, a 48-year-old female, have an extremely beautiful 35-year-old niece named Emma on my husband's side. She's a head-turner. She's very approachable, humble, and very smart. She's also very shy and has trouble asserting herself and enforcing boundaries. So, I used to know a guy named Dean, who's now 51 years old, from my first marketing job. We worked in the same building. Most youngsters knew each other and usually had lunch together at the lobby cafe. He was a very cool guy, super funny and likable. He was clear in his goal of becoming a business owner. Eventually, our small group kind of disbanded, and I moved on and slowly lost touch with my clique. Fast forward, and I'm married and actively looking to expand our business. I bumped into Dean at a dentist appointment. We exchanged updates while in the waiting room. He now owned a small business services company. I looked into his website and decided to give his services a try. He became our regular supplier, and our working relationship brought him lots of referrals. Basically, we indirectly helped him build his business. I had my niece Emma apply for a job at his company, as he was actively looking for new workers. She was hired as a little bit of everything employee. The pay wasn't great, but she was only one course short of graduating and wanted to build her resume. For about a year, our work routine involved paying him good, steady money for extremely professionally done services, such as payroll, accounting, etc. One day, Dean introduced us to Charlie. He'd been complaining that his business was getting slower and slower, and Charlie was some sort of a consultant. I use the term "some sort" because his actual scope wasn't clear. Charlie seemed like an okay guy, very formal and polite, with just the right balance between seriousness and smiles. We were invited to a business meeting so that Dean could discuss some stuff and hear our input. This wasn't rare. Dean and I had been avid brainstormer partners, and our sessions helped each other back when we first met. We had periodical discussions after we reconnected. I wouldn't discuss my business with him for ethical reasons, but I didn't mind hearing him out and perhaps offering my opinion. That meeting, Charlie and Dean presented a business opportunity, but my husband and I passed. At the end of dinner, everyone pitched in, but the tab was 90% short. Charlie apologized for not having money on him and directly asked my husband to cover him. We covered his portion because we felt that we were put on the spot. I made up my mind that if the guy didn't pay us back, I would have Dean reimburse the expense. My husband and I left the restaurant, and we discussed the dinner surprise. We decided to drop it to avoid getting paranoid. We really didn't know the guy, and Dean didn't seem bothered at all. Charlie paid us immediately, like at 10 o'clock the next morning, and he was contrite and apologetic. Charlie then became a fixture at Dean's office, and Dean had a change in behavior. He seemed hungry and thirsty for fast money schemes and quick success. They spent the day on meetings about mostly every MLM in the book, with Dean constantly out of his office. The quality of services dropped significantly. Dean's office had become some sort of a meeting place for the corner cutters, the alpha male wannabes, and the people who think, "I'm going to succeed fast and rub it in the face of each person who has called me incompetent." Our frequent dinner meetings thinned out. Charlie's true character began to surface. He made sexist jokes, ethnic jokes, talked down at people, and started to raise his voice. Once he took a sip of my niece's Coke, and she was disgusted, so she gave it to him and got a new one. Unfortunately, my niece became Dean's formal assistant, so she had to attend every meeting, sometimes until very late hours. And I began to wonder if she was getting paid for the extra hours, but I thought I could be wrong and did not want to interfere. We declined every invitation if we knew Charlie would be there. We had signed up for only 3 years of services and canceled on other services where customer quality had declined. It worked out. Then, we paid Dean $10,000 for installing our new platform with control over our own use of technology. 3 weeks went by, and we still couldn't use the platform. It didn't support multiple users as needed, and we required someone from Dean's company to visit on a daily basis because we couldn't get it running. Annoyed at the situation, we simply asked for the money back. Dean agreed and paid us $2,000 and promised the other $8,000 in installments. I asked for a personal meeting because I needed the whole thing resolved. We had paid our money, had no service, and we still had to wait to get a full refund. Really? By then, Charlie had taken full control and was running the show. Crucial employees were randomly getting fired, and Charlie yelled at everyone and made decisions with Dean never saying a word. My niece looked unhappy. Dean had her carry his suitcase and had her constantly serve Charlie some coffee. I also did not appreciate the crude jokes he directed at her either. Dean did nothing about it. As time went on, too many things weren't adding up. Charlie painted himself quite the 007 type. He was a former college professor, a former business owner, and a former marketing director. He spent months away from home and dramatically described one fateful New Year's Eve that he spent alone on a plane as the final straw that caused the end of his marriage, as he was such a workaholic. He was a fast talker and a great storyteller. He claimed long motorcycle rides in exotic places, such as Italy, and yet he had no car and was living at a friend's house and showed limited proficiency. When I pressed for my money, Charlie went ballistic. He tried to put me in a corner and tried to intimidate me. He asked, "Are you a software expert? Are you? Because if you were, you wouldn't need our services. Answer my question or shut up and stop talking because you don't know what you're doing." I started to answer that I wasn't an expert, and he quickly replied, "Then shut your mouth." I got up and told him that I'm no expert, but I'm the paying client. I warned him to watch his mouth and that he would not get a second warning. And sadly, my relationship with Dean was strained, and he did not stand up for me, neither as a friend or as a client. I told Dean I would never again deal with Charlie. I canceled all accounting and payroll services immediately. I had zero trust. Right away I researched Charlie's background. None of his corporate experience checked out, but he had an extensive criminal record. His record included gender violence, bank and wire fraud, securities fraud, patrimonial crimes, and a pending arrest warrant that dated 8 years prior. I sent all this information to Dean, and he never replied. I urged my niece to leave her job, but she decided to wait to end her semester and then get another job, which was a bad decision. She said that Dean owed her for a lot of overtime, and leaving her job would almost guarantee that she would never see that money. Out of the blue, Dean contacted me with a solution. He gave me an unconvincing apology and asked me to meet him and an excellent software company owner who could help. I insisted on getting my refund, but he promised that he would cover the expense. I addressed Charlie's criminal past, and he said he did not know but had confronted Charlie and cut ties for good. And it turns out he lied. So, with Dean, I met this lady. Her name was Frances, and she was hostile, standoffish, and showed a superiority complex. Apparently, she owned a yacht, multiple real estates, and had a presence across many states. I left when the meeting was over without an actual resolution that I had hoped for. She hardly mentioned anything about software. Frances talked a big game on other topics. So, I researched her and found lots of questionable information. I asked Dean directly if she was in any way connected to Charlie. He offered a vague answer of, "I don't know. It could be." When I pressed him for a yes or no, he said, "I can't compromise the integrity of my success by indulging in your unfounded assumptions." As it was, Dean's business was drying up. He saw Frances as his savior. She engaged him to help her set up one of her big companies and would pay him $750,000 total. She would also pay him $2,000 a week for 6 months just to do some company creation work on the side. I had a software engineer install a new system. Our initial intention was to get Dean's software up and running to avoid the additional cost of a new installation. The engineer informed me that the software could not possibly run because it was a knockoff from an outdated system. He advised me to file a complaint for fraud. Some more research led me to the conclusion that Dean had inflated his company's capacity for specialty software, and thus he also inflated the price. From what we paid him, he took $2,000 for himself and gave Charlie $8,000 to get whatever garbage they could sell me. This is exactly why I could not get my $8,000 back. And Frances was their source of software. I notified Dean that due to the nature of his relationship with a felon, we were canceling all remaining services. My niece got fired that afternoon, and Dean's excuse was her refusal to give Charlie a ride. Emma ended up coming to me and my husband. She was scared and very emotional. She explained that when I gave Dean my canceling notice, she was in his car and was about to get out and enter the office. Dean slammed the door so hard the car shook. She was so perplexed, and it took her a few seconds to get out. So Dean opened the door and yelled, "Get out!" The situation with Charlie had also escalated. Emma addressed this at work, but Dean's response was, "Grow up, toughen up, and how do you expect to make it in this cutthroat world if you're going to be so sensitive?" Charlie's jokes also became overtly sexual and explicit. In one incident a few months earlier, Charlie was drunk after yet another failed business meeting. Dean had ordered Emma to drive Charlie home, and he tried to assault her during the ride. He claimed he couldn't remember, and therefore it never happened. This time she refused to be Charlie's driver and a potential victim. Dean fired her after ranting about how Charlie was being targeted by losers and faithless know-it-alls. He got into a power trip and became verbally abusive, calling her a Miss Goody Two-Shoes and reminding her that she had been able to eat the whole time she worked for him because he paid her out of pity. He emailed her that due to her insubordination, lack of honesty, and malicious manipulation, her duties were terminated effective immediately. After hearing all of this, my husband and I stepped up to support her. We paid a good lawyer. This was no longer just about money. I went straight to the restaurant where Dean and Charlie routinely held their meetings, and I confronted Dean in front of his clients and warned Charlie that his luck had ended. I became very attentive to detail. I researched all types of records and found that Charlie had jumped his probation, and the arrest warrant was still in effect. The legal system had failed miserably at finding him. He had felonies in multiple states, and the supposed time doing business overseas was actually jail time. Emma proved her case on sexual harassment, and Dean had to pay $15,000 in owed salary and punitive damages, and he had to pay some fines. With that, I contacted as many of his former employees as possible who were fired and encouraged them to sue Dean. 3 of them actually did, and 1 of them won. I wanted him under legal and financial strain. He was ordered to refund my money plus legal costs, and the judge did not accept his whole "but it's Charlie's fault" excuse. My contract was direct with Dean, not Charlie. He also had to pay me for breach of confidentiality because Charlie wasn't his employee, nor was he a legally bound business partner. The court had opened a new investigation over potential financial fraud and theft of information, identity, etc., as Dean had access to clients' accounting and payroll information with lots of data. A new order of apprehension was issued against Charlie, but he ran. The judge ordered Dean's business permanently closed, and a forfeiture notice was issued. A while later, I saw on Facebook that Dean had been invited as a guest lecturer at a nearby college. That's funny because Dean had never actually finished college, and I knew this from the beginning. I contacted the college and voiced my concern over an unqualified professor teaching at their institution. They ended up announcing a different professor for the course without any explanation. During that fall, a former CO worker called my niece to give her the news that Francis had been arrested by the feds for a fraud scheme. And the best part is she stopped paying the $2,000 a week early but kept stringing Dean along for free work. I sent a formal notice to all the companies that I had referred him to and explained that I could no longer recommend his services. I added a copy of her own lawsuit for reference, and companies were dropping from his business like flies. Other lawsuits started popping up for dishonest services. This set a chain of events that led to his downfall. Dean had some car repo situations back when the business began to fail. I called the company and told them where to find him and at what time. This was easy because although he had closed shop, he and Charlie kept eating at the same restaurant. I wasn't there to see it, but I could confirm his car was towed. Dean's marriage broke apart, and he then faced charges for selling and profiting from illegal software and got probation. Dean lost his home and illegally occupied a portion of the abandoned commercial building next to his former office. I leaked this info in an anti-gentrification regional Facebook group. The zone was under scrutiny because residents were being pushed away. He used the spot as a small office and living quarters. The residents wanted it as a community center. They held a protest right in front of the building. The police eventually came, and he was charged with trespassing and stealing electricity from nearby buildings. Goodbye, probation. Charlie was harder to nail. He disappeared for years. I could not find him, but his mistake was gaining some confidence. His social media became moderately active, and he claimed to own some bogus business. He never appeared in any of his picture posts, which made me wonder whether he was posting from inside of jail or something. But I went to his aunt's profile and discovered that she posted regularly with some pictures showing him at family gatherings. I found out via her comments that he now had a young child and his legs were amputated from too much drinking. Same bad person, same freaking liar. On one of his pictures he had the caption, "Happy birthday, dear son, even though cold-hearted people are keeping us apart." With this, I found out he had an unpaid child support case. I anonymously contacted both the baby mama and the child support division. I gave them everything, his aunt's address and every freaking place I knew he visited. Charlie was eventually arrested, and new charges were filed, including sexual battery and financial abuse of a mentally ill adult. My case against him lasted almost 2 years, and I only recovered $3,000 out of the $8,000 he took. But seeing him all pale and listening to his trembling voice during the court hearings was satisfaction enough. The case took a toll on his already weakened health. As I watched his hands tremble, he cried and got ill when he was sentenced. He kind of just dropped his head and became super pale. I remember the judge's opening sentence, "I'm tired of this case. In over 10 years, I read your name in multiple warrants, and yet you avoid responsibility, forcing us to spend taxpayer money tracking you. What's wrong with you? You plead and bring up your health problems, but none of that deterred you from stealing, abusing, and debilitating the integrity of those under your influence." He served 4 years out of a 36-year sentence and died in 2019. After reading these stories, I've been thinking a lot about them. The Exploit My Generosity? Hopefully You Don't Like Driving story is a masterclass in turning the tables. I love how the op cleverly used the easy pass to trap those scammers, leading to arrests and fines. I've fallen for sob stories too, but spotting the lies, no formula, dilated pupils, and getting police involved. Sweet justice. The Wendy's side tale hits home. I once got duped by a hungry dog ploy, only to see the guy later. Heartstrings are scammers' weapons. When taking advantage of young employees goes terribly wrong, boils my blood. Exploiting an 18-year-old with illegal tasks like falsifying docs is vile. I admire the OP's revenge, whistleblowing to IRS, DOL, unions, and spamming Erica's email. Shutting down the shady HVAC biz in 6 months? Epic. Religious hypocrites like Dave and Erica deserve that downfall. I Will Make You Regret Being Born is revenge on steroids. I was riveted by the aunt's meticulous takedown of Dean and Charlie. Uncovering criminal records, suing for harassment, leaking info to repo cars and protests? Genius. Charlie's courtroom humiliation and death after prison feels like karmic closure, though sad for his victims. Protecting niece Emma shows family loyalty trumps all. And that brings us to another end of our /ProRevenge. If you missed the last episode of our /ProRevenge, go check it out right now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.